all about? And how did you even get to this name, Karza?
Fun story. Okay, so Omkar and I both started Karza in 2015. We started it because we wanted to do something of our own, right? And basically, the original idea was to create a peer-to-peer lending platform. And we thought that, okay, hey, you know what? Let's call it Karza with a tagline, Karz buri baat nahi hai. But this was way back before even RBI recognized P2P as a valid, enterprise, right? So we quickly pivoted based on advice of lawyers that, okay, hey, you guys are in for a large amount of penalties, because we had already envisaged a way to onboard customers digitally, verify their data. So we said, fine, we have thought or envisioned this specific stack. Let's share it with the world. And that is literally what Karza does. We enable digital onboarding, we enable counterparty intelligence, whether it be right from KYC to litigations to video KYC and a bunch of other services. 2022 is when we got acquired and we become a part of a larger group now called Perfios. Perfios on a standalone basis used to do, still does, of course, data analytics and account aggregation. And that's basically now the whole and soul of it. So we cover the entire lending life cycle for the BFSI fraternity.
Amazing. And from what I know is, in very simple words, if I were to describe what Karza does, is every time you sign up for a bank account or any app where they need to verify you, or if you apply for a loan, it's Gaurav, doing the DD on the background.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's true.
Awesome. Pulkit, you want to go next?
Yeah, thanks, Saket, and thank you, India Diaspora, for calling me here. And Saket, pleasure to be here with you, like always. So quickly about us, we are an OEM in the electric vehicle space. We manufacture electric trucks and also school buses for the India and global market. The idea was rather simple when we started 10 years back, that everybody was focused towards EVs, which were going from 0 to 100 in a few seconds, without realizing that 2 to 3% of vehicle contribute to 50% of pollution coming from automotive. And somebody had to look at vehicles which were commercial vehicles, which pollute significantly to a city's pollution. And the idea started from there, where India is famous for many things and also infamous for hosting many cities which are very polluting. So our aim was produce vehicles which contribute significantly to pollution and cut that stack there, and then re-innovate on the process of manufacturing. Instead of cutting of billions of trees and putting gigafactories, can we look at modular microfactories? Can we look at decentralized factories? So Saket, simply put, we are not different than gigafactories. We are opposite of gigafactories. And our thinking is that we are gigafactories. Microfactories are the new gigafactories. And we are 180 engineers producing trucks and buses every day as we do this.
Wow. So my first question, did you just wake up one morning thinking कि आज मुझे truck बनाना है? Like people think of making, starting a cafe or, building, uh,
I
building
agree.
software. Like building a truck is, just don't even
Yeah.
think about it. So how did you
No,
come up with that idea?
what
The
a great
dream.
question. The simplest answer is I didn't. My other two co-founders, I'm very fortunate to have incredible co-founders. My current co-founder, Indaveer, he's also the CEO. He looks after the whole technology aspect of it, and for almost 3 decades of his life. And when I say 3 decades, he's in his 40s, right? So since his family runs one of the largest automotive companies in India, it's a listed company, and he exited that during the time of IPO and decided to be in the OEM space from a component manufacturing. And it was his idea to totally reimagine the way manufacturing process takes place. And he and I go back to university. We know each other since we were 19. So, and he's the one during ragging time he would increase the mileage of Splendors of our seniors. So he never got dragged. And he made his first EV when he was 19 years old, right? He converted a Maruti 800. So I'm like, ye kar raha hai to acha hi hoga, right? And I had exited my last two startups. So and it took us a year to finalize this. But in that 1 year, we were very clear that boss impact mein kuch karna hai. We were very clear. And at that stage, I was working on pharma. I've always taken engineering sort of products to solve the impact space, right? The sector has been impact. And then this seemed like a real problem to solve. And I couldn't have found better co-founders than Harnoor and Indavir to work together at the time. Yeah. And hence I didn't wake up one day and said truck banani hai. I
But
think they
was
did,
it
and they
was
convinced me.
was it intimidating, like when you started saying, okay, there is when you think of a truck, you only think of Ashok Leyland, Tata, Force, like, and then is it intimidating to even think about it and then say, okay, I will compete against these guys? Like, how's that feeling like?
I'll absolutely honest. I didn't know much about automotive space. So if you don't, it works in your benefit sometimes, right? It wasn't intimidating because I didn't know the mammoth Tata Motors is or Ashok Leyland is, right? Or the Hindustan Group is. I didn't even know the relationship between Hindustan and Ashok Leyland in that time. All I knew was this is a big problem and it needs to be solved. That's all I knew, right? And I knew that none of the large OEMs were working on it, right? Like there were no EVs. Forget about trucks, right? There were just no passenger EVs also. EVs were only penetrated to bad three-wheeler e-rickshaws. Honestly, that's it with lead acid battery, not even lithium ion. So if the problem is large enough, it's worth attacking it for certain time. And of course, we were young, and it's been 10 years, right? We were young and we were foolish and we didn't have experience. It worked in our favor, I would say, at that time. And then slowly, when we started realizing against competition, we realized that the product is going to win. If we focus on product and the quality of product is good, eventually the customer will choose the best product. It doesn't matter. It's a bit like restaurant business, right? If you make the best dal makhni, right, it doesn't matter which who there are 50-year-old restaurants. If they don't innovate constantly on the product, they're going to. And listen, Nokia, BlackBerry, there've been enough and more examples where legacy does not ensure success forever.
No, that's a very deep one. In fact, next question leading to that to Gaurav is, like if you look at the fintech space in India, uh, every time I travel abroad, I'm like, the system of making payments is so backwards. When you look at the whole UPI stack in India, and now you can actually pay it, pay an entry ticket to get an entry ticket to Eiffel Towers using UPI. So it's fairly like a proud feeling in a moment. So what's caused that entire fintech revolution in your mind, Gaurav? Like, has there been a big role that the government played or the banks played, or overall the Indian community that brought it together?
No, so I think it started from the government side, of course, right? The entire crackdown on black money for whatever it's worth. The intent was that okay, hey, if we can move the masses to, let's say, using digital payments, it creates a certain, I would say, accord to use, let's say, white money, right? It started with that intent, to the best of what I have read and heard. And from there is where this specific government at least enabled a lot of micro entrepreneurs, as well as created these think tanks which came up with the initiatives such as UPI, BBPS, and a bunch of other such systems, right? So uh, in a certain way, banks listened to RBI, who then obviously followed suit, led from the center. But it's a collective effort, right? If, let's say, you can create one of the best systems, but if it's not working, 10 out of 50 times, it still leaves a very bad taste. And I don't think you've seen that kind of SLA, even in the domestic infrastructure play, correct? So To a certain degree, I would say it was a push from the government. It was led by a lot of innovations such as Paytm, GPay, etc., coming in to enable this at a mass level. While there was and is Beam UPI, etc., you can clearly see that okay, today even apps like Jar, etc., are providing UPI as a payment medium, even though they started, let's say, as a digital gold company, correct? As an example, so. Yeah, so from a fintech ecosystem perspective, now obviously because it propelled India both internationally at an image level, as well as showcase that okay, hey, this kind of a mass infrastructure shift is possible, especially at the kind of scale at which you're talking about. Like it's a billion people trying to use these same systems, right? It has inspired others, and then luckily, so if you read up on US Fed now, correct, they themselves are trying to adopt UPI there in a native way. Another reason why local governments are now across the globe trying to pick this up is also to build that self-sustainability. What happens is that if a country gets sanctioned, right? So let's take an example of Russia. They got sanctioned Visa, MasterCard pulled out of the country. In that same manner, India is right now trying to promote RuPay. That okay, hey, if for for whatever godforsaken reason, the same kind of an event has to happen within India, right or wrong. The country should be self-sustainable and it needs to be equivalently digital to, let's say, if you have to benchmark China or any other developed or developing economy, digitally speaking. So uh, yeah, I think without the government's push, such a scale and such kind of a success is not possible. So this one I'll definitely give it to the government. Yeah, you're on mute, Saket.
It's fascinating. Every time you think about banks, enterprises, especially fintech, the fintech industry is known for not changing and not moving fast enough. You've heard of NDAs taking 1 year to get signed. Uh, you know, the second question is really like when you deal with enterprises, large banks, how do you navigate the emotions as a founder to, uh, you know, deal with the complexity, bureaucracy, driving change, and to a big extent, Pulkit, you would also have the same thing when you get your regulatory approvals for a vehicle. I remember you were mentioning how you spend millions of dollars doing so many tests and licenses and certifications. So Gaurav, any in learnings, experiences on driving change?
So I think Pulkit touched upon it in a indirect way that if your product is excellent, right, then the well and the Muhammad, it doesn't matter who's going to each other, right? So I think one of the things that people assume invariably, especially founders, is that your product is the best, right? But the fact is that if you're, let's say, taking a Me Too product which lacks innovation and which is not really solving a problem, but just creating a persona of a problem, and okay, you know what, here's a solution, that thing never flies, correct? So, first things first is obviously have that self understanding that okay, yeah, where does your product rank in the order? Is it a Me Too? Is it something unique? If it is something unique, then is the value prop a win-win-win, right? If that is the case, at least in Karza's case, we are very, very fortunate that we saw things move very, very fast. So I wouldn't say that necessarily banks or even larger enterprises are invariably slow at a DNA level. If they want to move fast, they do move fast. The second thing I think we had done was one of our investors had told us this very early in our journey that don't as a in a business you don't keep ego. And by God's grace, again, that is one virtue I have not really followed. So if an NDA does come, which has clauses which I know are, let's say, unlimited liability indemnities, right? I know that, okay, hey, you know what? Like, if there is that kind of an event, I any which ways have to face the brunt, right? Irrespective of what is written on a piece of paper. So, may as well accept it and move on. So, to a certain degree, we were cognizant of the risks that we were taking. And obviously, we had that self belief that, okay, hey, our systems were clean and clear. Anytime we would process any data, we ensured that we are never saving anything whatsoever, right? So, to that degree, if you don't have anything to steal in a vault, your vault is never going to get raided, correct? So, we followed those kind of philosophies, and yeah, like I think the rest is history, right? We closed almost 1,000+ customers in our lifetime across fintechs, NBFCs, rating agencies, insurers, bureaus, and of course banks, right? So
Yeah.
I think yeah, that
No, no,
is a
incredible, incredible, incredible. I think it's just a lot comes from believing in yourself and believing in your product. If you're doing the right things, then there's a pull mechanism, then a push mechanism that plays out. Pulkit, in your industry, like one thing that I always keep wondering, like today you decide to, first you dream of building that truck, you found those co-founders, who dreamt, and you joined them, and it takes almost like 2 years, 3 years. We don't know how many years it takes to build it and then get all the regulatory approvals because
Six
it's
years. 6 years.
6 years. Okay. 6 years. How do you emotionally deal with that? Like as a founder, we want to build this. You're telling people you're building this amazing electric vehicle company, and they're asking you, when is it gonna come?
Wow. Okay. So, you know what? The funny part of entrepreneurship is, and I'm sure millions of people around the world will resonate, that if you are uh, unsuccessful in a business which you start, and your family is going to be like, you never spend time with us, you'll miss your daughter's first birthday, her first steps, and you won't be able to drop your kid for the first day of the school. Your parents will miss you. Your friends are going to say you're never there for our important occasions. But even if you're successful, it's exactly the same. So being entrepreneurship is just extremely difficult. And success is just a majority of the founders fail, which is a fact, right? So being emotionally present on day-to-day wins is so important, because as a founder, all I see when I enter office is what is going wrong. And that's just the nature of being a founder, is you focus on what is wrong, because if you see everything right, then what's the point of solving? You're not solving anything. And sometimes it starts playing on your mind too much, because constantly you're trying to fix things day in and day out, and it's a lot more to do before you have a team. We were a team of 12 engineers for the first 6 years, which built the prototype, which we just built a chassis, right? We first started with wood, then we used aluminum, then we used steel, then we got a few metals together and we tested it. It was just, it's a process of elimination. Is still you find tungsten, you have failed hundreds of times to find इस वायर से बल्ब जलता है, right? And that's what product engineering is. I think family is just so important at that stage. There is no other way to say it, right? Which keeps you calm and say, carry on. I have a very supporting wife. I have very supporting family, which keeps us on. And that's where co-founders are so important, because it's impossible that you don't get down. You do get down. You're like, ye chassis bhi nahi chali hai. This chassis also we cracked, right? And we've been working for the last 8 months for it, right? And then they come in, okay, let's try this. And I think it's a whole ecosystem, right? And Saket, we know each other for a very long time. That's where the whole ecosystem of investors, from co-founders, from family, everybody comes together to support you. There will always be more people to bring you down and lesser people to bring you up, all, and that's unproportionate, right? Like there'll be 100 of people to bring you down and 3 to bring you up. Idea is to surround you with both in the right proportion, and age teaches you that.
Yeah. No,
Both play an
absolutely.
important role. Both
No,
play an important.
absolutely, absolutely. I think the everyone, friends and family, everyone needs to come together. It's a lonely journey at the top, but you got to do it. But curious to know. So I've personally invested in a lot of enterprise software companies, the ecosystem for enterprise software, consumer tech startups. It's very very black and white. People know that space. When you go to raise money for building an electric truck, what do you really go through? Like how easy, difficult is it? Do people even understand what you're wanting to do? And it's not a small amount of capital, it's a lot of capital when the returns come after a long period of time. How does that how's that played out for you?
Um, I
Also,
don't think.
any specific learnings, that you may want to share, because I think now the next wave of Indian tech companies that I'm seeing personally is manufacturing, real products, healthcare innovations. And these guys usually have a lot of challenge in getting the right kind of investors to invest.
Um, I don't think great question, Saket, and I think it'll be important for so many people. I don't think raising any amount of money is easy. First, you're raising $500,000 or $500 million. You go through the same grind. Fortunately, now it's a lot easier to understand different pockets of money and industry focus by people who are investing in, right? At least 10 years back, they were just investors, just that. As opposed to investors who come in Series A, Series B, Series C, their investment theses are a lot more clearer. And I'm guessing it will keep getting clearer. So it's easy to shortlist, right? It wasn't that time, right? So we didn't know if we were it was just impossible to know what was their internal thesis before you start reaching out. I mean, when you're reaching out, if you know this, it saves so much of time, right?
Yeah.
Like if you're reaching out to Sequoia, they have X number of funds. Each partner looks at this, and each of them has this focus. If you know this, it's just so much easier to reach out to them. Access, fortunately, has not been a problem for us, but knowing is important, right? That what they are focusing on. The learning has been for us to focus on core technology, to identify the right people, and then tell them that the potential of this technology. Unfortunately, on our side, what we were doing was the first time in the world. Nobody had worked on a microfactory. Nobody had put a prototype using composite material. Nobody had created a chassis which could take 1 ton to 20-ton payload. And there were people who were so-called the gurus in EV had also not worked on something like this. So for VC to understand automotive ecosystem was anyway difficult, and then a complex EV ecosystem was even more difficult. So our work was not only to convince them, was also to educate them. So we realized it very quickly that we first need to educate before convincing, right? And that was, and when you're dealing with difficult products, start with educating the people. First choose the right kind of people. And I mean, simply put, Saket, if I have to cut down a tree in 1 hour, I will use the first 55 minutes to sharpen the axe, and then the last 5 minutes to cut the tree. So before you start reaching out to an investor, identify who you're speaking with, what do they like, what is the industry focus, who have they invested in, blah blah blah. Understand that, speak to the right person. And after that, if they do not understand it and they're just sitting with money, you then educate them and then talk about a company. You come in the end, because you might give your best pitch and you'll realize that person doesn't even know, right? So what's the point? And that's the process. Now when we raise money, we actually bring a bunch of products in our factory, and we showcase to our investors that this is our product, this is what exists in the competition, see it and evaluate it yourself, right? So we go a long way in educating. That we learned a lot.
Yeah, no, that's a fair one. I think in your case, people want to see the real product, and it's a chicken and egg situation. Till the time you make the product, the money doesn't come, and the money. Yeah, my visit to the
And
factory
Saket,
is
sorry,
still
one more
overdue.
thing. Yeah, one more thing. The goalpost keeps changing all the time,
Yeah,
right? First, he was saying, "Give us money, we'll build one prototype." Then you're like, and then once we built a prototype, they were like, "Oh, but how will you get the supply chain in order?" Then we got the supply chain order. They were like, "Oh, but how will you build the factory? Oh, how will you scale up the factory? How will you get employee?" So the goalpost keeps changing. And such is the nature of business. Making a prototype is nothing to do with commercializing. Those are two very, very different problems to solve. So getting patient backers who look at you and also assist you in going forward is the key. So always look at investors who bring more than money. Is I'll go quiet. You were saying something, please.
no. I was saying my visit to the factory is overdue, so hopefully soon. uh, But Gaurav, jumping the gun from capital raising to PAT, profit after tax, it's a very you know of late it's becoming more prominent. People are talking about profits than valuations. But what fascinated me about your journey is that you've been 7 years, 7-year-old company Karza, and you've been profitable for 5 years out of 7. Uh, it's not easy to hear fintech in companies in particular selling to banks in India make revenue, uh, real revenue and real profits. So you've made a lot of PAT. You've got a good exit. Any learnings that you want to share? How did you do it?
Sure. So I think, see, to be very honest, I have never understood, the loss leader concept, right? Per se. I mean, I get it, but any business, the Marwadi principles sort of teach you that, okay, hey, you know what, you're running a business, you need to make money, get money home, right? Now, the one invariable assumption that sort of media drills into you is that, okay, hey, you know what, A raised so much money, B raised so much money. So a few first time entrepreneurs especially think that, okay, hey, you know what, money is an endless supply, and but they fail to see that, okay, ultimately your value is the equity that you hold, which is what is shrinking, right? So when we had to go raise our first round, it was very, very difficult, right? Two CAs running a tech company was kya kar rahe log. So which is where we diluted a significant amount upfront itself. We gave very, very cheap valuation because we understood, okay, hey, you know what, it'll take time for people to have that faith and belief in both the space and us. So once we had raised the money, we knew our product market fit was set. We hustled our way through. We had two options: either then you again go out raising another large round, or you just run a company which is built on the principles of traditional businesses, and you grow as rapid as a VC funded company by just hustling. So I would say that almost, I think every employee in Karza, at least during our heydays, were functioning at 120% bare minimum, if not more. We obviously rewarded them very, very well. We still pay above market salaries in a way, but it was only for the right talent and if the talent is delivering. So that was sort of the periphery that we chose as okay, hey boss, is tarike se company run karni hai. And that worked for us, right? It used to be very intimidating because our closest competitors had raised like 15 million, 20 million, and we were at like 800K, right? And we said that, dude, it's okay. Like, there were, in fact, I still remember right before we had gotten acquired, we were evaluating companies to acquire, right? Because we had money in the bank and we said, Abhi kare kya iska? So basically, yeah, like one thing I did try, I think in around 2021, I had entered the market to do a fundraise to start US ops. That, okay, US is a very large market. We believe that, yes, whatever it is that we've built for, India can be replicated there. And a bunch of VCs said that, no, first you have to build the products, show traction there, then we will give you money. I said, but then I won't need you, right? I need the money to invest there. So that was the chicken egg problem that you mentioned, right? That we also faced through. But yeah, I think if required, businesses can be PAT positive. I understand that, yes, it's after a decade that VCs and most investors are now genuinely looking at PAT because money has become a dearer commodity. But yeah, like I think irrespective of what the world says, ultimately, if you're entering the business ecosystem and you're a founder, you should be founder to yourself. You need to ensure that there's value creation across the stakeholder network. And that doesn't happen when you are incurring losses, right? There is someone losing. So how can someone win when winning means someone loses? So yeah, that's the thought.
Yeah, I think the unfortunate part is sometimes when the money is in so much abundance, so many founders have raised so much money, then you just get lost whether to spend, where to spend the money and how to spend the money, and whether it's really gonna add value to what I started the business for. That dilemma is what eats up many, many people. So it's not easy. We got one follow-up question. Like you said something interesting about, the raising capital piece. What I observed about your journey is, you got acquired for $80 million by Perfios in 7 years. Um, and I remember telling you at that time, like, did you sell too cheap? Because I thought, you're an amazing founder, you should at least be a billion-dollar company. But then the other fascinating thing that stood out for me was you and Omkar, the other founder, both of you had 52% of the company. Now, making a $40 million for the promoter versus, having 2% of a $500 million company, billion-dollar company, the same amount. So how should founders look at this? When to exit, what's the right time?
So, fair. I mean, I've been asked this question actually quite a few times, especially after the exit. Oh, how did you decide, etc., etc. Right? So, and probably Pulkit can also, confirm this. But as if you're running something which is unique and let's say remotely successful, also, you will end up getting a lot of interest, right? Okay, do you want strategic investment? Do you want to get acquired, and so on and so forth? And we were fortunate enough that almost every year we used to get at least one interest slash offer, right? At the start of Karza or even before that, right? We had set specific personal goals that, okay, there is one thought process that you want to leave a legacy for your family and, those kind of things, right? Which probably $1 billion or a multi-billion-dollar business can do because, it's going to survive probably quite a few tailwinds. But for Omkar and I think from day zero, it was very clear that, okay, hey, we want to build obviously a very successful company. We want to deliver value and we want value for ourselves. We come from very, very, very humble backgrounds, not like both his dad, my dad, we came in from different places. They built businesses themselves, so we've seen the struggle, we've seen this thing. And you always want to outdo your previous generation, right? So you create those benchmarks, you create those milestones, you adhere to it, and then you need to have that discipline that, okay, hey, let's say if I'm getting that X thing which I had always dreamt of, where do you stop, right? Greed is always infinite. So for us, it was a very personal decision. Just like Pulkit mentioned, right, that basically, being a founder is a very lonely journey. And I knew, like, for me, it was, my wife was about to deliver, and I only heard horror stories about how expensive kids are. So I was like, boss, that reason alone was enough for me. Ki, okay, boss, abhi paisa lagega. So it's okay. Yeah, that was my primary motivation.
Incredible. So,
Saket, if you don't mind, I have a question for you.
yeah.
We're talking about PAT, and we are also gross margin positive, and I think we are the only EV truck company in the world gross margin positive, which majority of the people are losing thousands of dollars with each vehicle they put up. As an investor, do you look at that in the horizon when you're investing?
First of all, happy to learn that EVH is making PAT already, being an investor. So that's a good news. Thank you for sharing. Personally, look, I bootstrapped my company. We've been profitable from day zero. So the personal bias, I just don't understand how can a business not make profit after a short stint, especially in a business which is services driven. There's an opportunity cost of the founder that is starting it. That if you factor in, you see the math. But there's a reasonable amount of time you consider, capital you consider, as long as you're able to launch your product, which can establish, okay, if I sell at X, this is my cost Y, and overall it should make unit economics. That is something that really matters to me. Of course, in a capital intensive business like EV, you have to deploy a lot of capital in the beginning, and then you start seeing some results. But it is very important for the founder to know how will he make profit after a certain point of time, which sometimes, shockingly is not very clear to many founders. Like, they're like, okay, we'll just acquire users and then we'll figure out monetization. Versus, okay, knowing at some point, this is how I will monetize.
But Saket, I have a follow-on question here then.
Yeah.
So had you envisaged, so today Innovation, I believe, is live with, hundreds of unicorns and unicorns as well, right? Across the tech ecosystem in India, as well as now in the US. So when you had started, right? My question is, did you actually envisage that, okay, hey, this day I will, I want 100 plus customers who are paying me so many $100,000 in ARR and so on and so forth, or was it a go with the flow strategy that worked for you?
Yeah, I think just go with the flow. I didn't even know, to be honest, what cloud was before I started. Cloud was literally cloud. Uh, yeah, genuinely. So I think it was being a CA, I understood like the value of money. Like, where do you spend time that generates the ROI? And the first project that we worked on at a unit economic level, it generated very, very handsome profits. And I saw that trend of SaaS, as an industry growing. The B2B sector in Israel and US was very strong. The B2C sector in India was very, very big. So once we solved one problem for the Indian companies, and they were willing to pay for it, it's always hard to get Indians to pay for software. And we established that people are willing to pay big money for your software. Then you just double down on the trend, like you just ride the wave. So in that whole journey, I think the focus was very, very important. If you get something that works, just go all out, right? And that's what got us here, uh, and nothing else, to be honest. And of course, I did not have any idea this is what we will be doing, or I will be the guy, CTO of a decacorn will call when they have a cyber attack, right? Not knowing technology in the real sense. Yeah.
Saket, when you started investing and how you invest now, I'm sure the thesis has changed a lot. What would
Totally.
be the key things which have changed from then to now for you? What do you look for in a company now than what you looked 8 years back?
And just to add on a point, what is it that you don't invest in? Like basically, these are no-go zones.
Okay, so four different questions, but let me just start with Gaurav, what you asked. I think the first no filter for me is the founder. If the energy is not good and I don't feel like the guy is street smart, guy girl, and they don't have what it takes to ride the wave, that's a big no-go. It's the ability for people to evolve. Like, startup in space is very dynamic. You have to evolve every single hour or every single day. So if someone does not have the ability to change, that becomes a big no-go. But in general, like, we were talking about a lot of problems, like Gaurav, you came up with a solution to solve a very big problem the banking industry had, or Pulkit, you came. I think the biggest thing I would look for is how big of a problem am I solving, or how deep of a problem in a specific industry are we looking to solve? And is the customer willing to pay me top dollars for it? That happens when you're solving a very must-have problem versus a good-to-have problem, right? So there were so many apps during COVID where you could book someone to stand in a queue for you, when you're going somewhere. Now, it was a good problem to solve for a limited time, but it was not an absolutely necessary problem. So you want to find something which is very, very deep, changes someone's life. Uh, People are willing to pay money and consistently pay you money for a longer period of time. So that's what I would do. What changed in the last 2 years of investing is there was this whole frenzy at some point where everyone's investing money because it's cool to invest money. You hear of, okay, this founder of a large company is investing in this startup, so it must be a good company. So you also put in a check, not realizing that that founder has also not spent more than 2 minutes in evaluating the product, right? So you got to be very careful on really understanding where are you putting your money. Does it really align with your expertise, and do you believe in the business in the first place, right? So that's very high level. But maybe I'll ask. I'll go next to Pulkit. In the whole EV space, this is what very fascinating to me is, um, when you started to now, is there a way you monitor like progress? Like, do you know, okay, today we launched say one maybe you started with conceptualizing the design of the vehicle, and then you have to figure out the battery, the chassis, the so many components. Is there a way like a founder should think about measuring, your entire journey? Are we on the right track? Like it must be very unnerving every day when you wake up, like, are we even doing the right thing or not? So how do you deal with that?
Man, a deep question. But simply put, you become what you measure. And it's important to measure the right things. If you don't measure the right things, you become the wrong thing. So there are few straightforward, non-negotiable measurement, which is the number of vehicles in this tag time coming out of the assembly line, right? Then there are strategic things. If you need to create an EV stack to be a winner, which will be the technology breakthroughs in X number of years? What do we need to do now? Unfortunately, the R&D in automotive goes in years and millions of dollars. So if I need to be a winner in 5 years, I need to start working on it now. And it's very difficult to predict it 100%, right? A lot of the best of the companies around the world get it wrong in technology. I'll give you an example. For example, somebody might say solid state battery is the best battery which is working on. But you don't know, in 4 years' time, something else might come up, right?
Yeah.
Which might be better, and you spend billions of dollars in it. It's just something as simple as battery technology. So you have to be flexible, but at the same time, focus towards certain technologies. So our aim, so it works on different streams, and it's very difficult to. You need to realize first is that you will do R&D for 10 things, out of which 8 or 7 will become obsolete in a few years, right? And few will carry on. So it's a whole system of creating those number of hours and allocating that amount of money to work on technology like this. It's less to do with consumer behavior changing. What does a consumer want in trucking industry? Go from point A to point B, safe होना चाहिए, सामान safe होना चाहिए, driver safe होना चाहिए, comfortable होना चाहिए, and थोड़े पैसे बचाने चाहिए, right? That's all. If it's green or not green, usually the driver owner doesn't care that much, right? It what matters is saving money for majority of the developing countries. So which technologies will enable us? And it's a process which we learn through failure. We worked on a lot of things which we then realized, yeah, this is we need to like stop loss, right, and move on to the next part of it. And it's different with different business. With automotive or a product business is extremely different than probably what Gaurav would do. But I think it's fair to say that all of us need to spend time and money in areas which we think will make a customer win. That needs to be step one. What will make a customer win or save money or save time or benefit in certain way in a certain period of time? What will enable, knowing very well that during the course of time that might change. I'm sorry, I don't know if I answered a question or confused
No,
you.
it's very, very, very real because if you look at the whole space that Tesla is going through, there are so many Chinese competitors, US competitors. I recently drove a Merc in the EV Mercedes, and I felt like the performance, the acceleration was just like smoother than butter would have. And then I was feeling like Mercedes was also going the extra league. They're not like being slow. Probably they've found something better, and that cycle is very hard to catch on. You have to be always switched on. Um, Interesting. And Gaurav, like in one thing that keeps because I've invested in so many SaaS in Israel, US, some in India. One dream I've always had is what would it take for Indian companies to crush it in the US in the SaaS. I do want to clarify. Like I think the SaaS play for Indians is very strong, which means that when I go to San Francisco and I meet a very cool enterprise software company in security or data or fintech, uh, many times, most of the times, it's someone who's an Indian who's running it. But there's always this challenge for Indian companies to sitting in India to crack the US market. I sometimes even question like, is it even a thing that you can be sitting in India and selling in the US or cracking the US market?
No, so I think, see, you can't, I mean, not always, but you can't sit in India and think that, yes, you're going to do, let's say, splendid SEO and, customers are going to just come in like flies on a sweet, right? So The idea is that you can have your development center in India because you have that cost arbitrage indirectly, right? Of course, it's going to be painful because of the time difference. Like the front-ending team who has to touch base with the customer, who has to understand the problem, get that constant feedback, ensure that that feedback loop is again fueling the next product feature, or defining how your business roadmap needs to shape up. So there it has to be a mix of both. You cannot be in one center and expect the customers to basically be okay with just talking with you remotely. It can work once or twice, but I don't think that it can become a then a very large entity, right? You have to have a very deep sense of the customer pulse. I think that really worked for us in Karza, for instance. If I have to draw an analogy, our tech, 99% of the companies you hear who are in BFSI will have their tech in Hyderabad or Bangalore or somewhere else, but they'll have a front end office in Bombay. We were probably one of the only folks that I know of who had their tech center in Bombay itself as well. So my intent was very simple. Number one, I hate to travel, so I don't want to do the Bombay Bangalore circuit. But more than that, it was that okay, hey, you know what? The space that we are working in is changing so rapidly. I used to sit on literally top of my developer's head. Okay, bhai, tu, I need this feature within a week. Get it done, right? So there's a very big difference that happens when you are in front of the customer or even in front of the talent that you need to uh, get things done from. So
Yeah.
don't necessarily agree that you can sit out of one place and
Yeah. No,
perform magic.
absolutely. And Pulkit, just one follow-up to you is on the quality aspect. Like, in India, we've also been, there's this whole perception, especially in a space like automotive vehicles and others, like the attention to details, the quality. Somewhere, there's this perception, if it's made in India, it's not probably the best versus what is made in Germany. Uh, have you had any time to reflect on it? Like, does it personally bother you? We're gonna really smash it and uh, be known for that extra attention to detail and quality when you export specifically.
Quality is a perspective. I will put it this way. First, one has to understand what does the customer want and what are they willing to pay. If you're driving a Mercedes US and you're willing to shell $300,000 to get that butter kind of acceleration, you're paying for that acceleration, and that is quality. They put the best braking system, the best powertrain, high voltage architecture, whatever it is required. If I'm making in India for a customer who cares about every $1 and cares, I need to understand what the customer wants first, right? And that hierarchy needs to be absolutely crystal. If you're confused, you're going to make a rubbish product, right? What does the customer want and what is he or she willing to pay? First is that to understand. And if you make that, it's quality, simply put, right? If the customer doesn't want the best, how do I say, what is okay with the plastic finish, right? For in the rear view mirror, let me put it this way, or it wants a glossy platinum surface, glass surface finish and is willing to pay $500, I will put it for $500, no problem. But if a customer is not willing to pay for it, I'm not going to put that. I'll put something which is safe, but quality is what a customer is willing to pay. So we are making for the Indian audience, we are making for the trucking industry where every rupee counts. We'll make the safest product, we'll make the most efficient product, we'll make the product which makes customers save money. If the customer wants something extra, you pay, you add on, and you keep doing it. So that's how I understand quality, not the way anybody else understands quality.
Interesting. Yeah, I think for me personally, quality is also a lot about attention to detail, which you also very finely articulated. A lot is also driven by, are we doing the right things that makes the customer experience very smooth? So when I look at enterprise software, a key difference I see in software A versus software B is how easy is it to be integrated up and running and to use, and that transition is happening. Like, it is so painful to be up and running with a SAP or a Salesforce or Oracle, and you need a bunch of services players to come and deploy it, versus the new age companies, which is literally like plug and play, right? So I think that's been a big shift. Um, One, I think we have few minutes left, but one deeper question I want to ask Gaurav is, now that you've got an exit, you sold your company, and you'll be looking to do your next thing. It's always this dilemma because you had a baby for 7 years. Now you've given it to someone else uh, to grow the baby. How do you deal with that, and how do you even figure out what to do next? Because you're so used to being in a
Yeah, so
space
I'm going
playing
through
product
that
company.
as we speak, right? So, see, I think the first part of the question, correct, giving the baby away, that part I got wrong. I thought I was, like I'll be able to be very objective. It's only a transaction and, like, be building a business and blah, blah, blah. It's only post facto that I realized, the kind of, let's say, impact that it has on you when people randomly, let's say one employee calls me and he's just, there's no reason for that guy to call. He's like, hey, just wanted to tell you that I was at some wedding and they asked me मैं कहाँ काम करता हूँ. I said I had customer success at Karza. The person was a banker. He said, oh, I love what you guys have built, etc. So the thing is, those little feedbacks, then you keep hearing, right? You then realize how much you miss that baby, right? So yeah, it's not an easy decision, irrespective. Rather, the decision is easy, but it's not so easy to live with that decision later. That's something I learned the hard way, I would say. In terms of how to find, let's say, anything that you want to do next, right? So, see, just like you, when I didn't know, right, कि भाई ये करना है, it's just the go with the flow thing happens, and destiny sort of takes you wherever it has to. But yeah, in terms of, I personally like the EXO kind of the format, right, where very little capital, but the growth can be exponentially charged. So similarly, I've created like a no-go, segment, right? Okay, I don't like brick and mortar. I don't like services where you're dealing with people more than tech or so on and so forth. So and if, let's say, I just carve out this, and then any other idea that comes around, again, the idea needs to origin from a very real problem. And usually, at least the mistake that I've seen a few other entrepreneurs make is that immediately after their exit, they quickly jump onto the next thing, right, that they have thought about, without thinking about the fact that, okay, is this really solving a problem? So for me, I'm trying to find problems in my day-to-day life now actively, which then I see that, okay, hey, is this worth solving? And that's literally the thought process that I'm going by.
Yeah, amazing. For all those who are listening, I can absolutely say, if you have problems, please share with Gaurav.
Yeah.
He can be a great co-founder to have, and more than found a lot of fun to work with
I'm
as
happy
well.
to take 50% of innovation and join you, Saket, if
Yeah, sure. Uh, but Pulkit, any final comments from your side, like any learnings you want to share with everyone?
Um, uh, s- yeah, we've spoken about going through flow, going in a flow, which comes naturally. And what is and Saket, you briefly mentioned earlier that surrounding yourself with the right kind of people is important. I don't think that can be stressed more for any entrepreneur. We must constantly look for people who are smarter than us in our sector constantly, and that never ends. I still do. I thrive on it. I still write on LinkedIn to my heroes on messages. I DM them saying, "Can I get a chance?" And you'll be amazed with my success rate. It's amazing, right? I think it's around 5 to 7%. I still get reply. What do people who will be like, "This is impossible to reach," right? So thank God the social media has achieved that. But I really get my kicks out of meeting people who are much, much smarter than me in every aspect. And thankfully, world is filled with those kind of people. So so the final words from my end is this is easy to do. And a lot of entrepreneurs are willing to spend time. If somebody goes that additional and pokes you and say, listen, I really need 5 minutes of your time. If you have that hustle in you, entrepreneurs will spend time. And just I think that needs to be really focused on. Of course, strategy will come in later, and some things come with age, right? And some by age I mean age in a business, right? And that will come in, but always focus on a part of finding the right kind of people who inspire you. And that will come into you becoming a better operator in your business. I'll end with that.
Oh, no, amazing. Thank you. Both of you also part of my core group to inspire me personally. It's always fascinating. Uh, I think I just want to summarize, some key learnings for everyone here in this conversation. There were so many things we discussed, but few things that really stood out for me is like it all starts with a, self-belief. Like unless you believe in what you're, starting, then you can't make others believe in joining your journey. So Pulkit and Gaurav, like congratulations to believe in what you're doing. What you started with first to build a truck to a fintech company, changing the banking ecosystem. Um, I also felt that there's a lot of focus on building something real which solves a real problem, not for valuations but for profits. So it was music to hear Pat, and that's amazing. Quality, attention to detail. So very important to do what we do with the focus to make something world class and not something uh, you know something just for the sake of doing it. I've always believed if you do something, you go all out, you give your 200%, build it so good that people just want to keep coming to you, like the pull mechanism that Gaurav spoke about. And yeah, last thing, Pulkit, you said something, you just have to ask and people are there to help. I've had a very similar journey, that I just had to reach out to someone, text them, and people are very happy to help you out as long as you're adding value to a conversation. And to add to that, I would say when I was 21, my first venture was a vada pav chain. It was called Ao Pav Khao. I had no idea about this. I realized after finishing my CA, I realized I don't enjoy being a CA. So that was my venture. And it was amazing because I was young and I had a lot of smile and energy. I had like the best of people in the food industry helping me out for free. So to your point, I would encourage everyone to just go out and ask for help when you need and offer a lot of help when others, and that makes the average of five stronger and stronger. So thank you guys for joining, and thank you Indiaspora. Look forward to being in touch.
Thank you, Saket. You've been fantastic. And thank you, Gaurav.
Thank you.
So
Thank
much
you,
to
Gaurav.
learn.
Thank you, Pulkit.
Thank
Okay.
you. Terrific session. Thank you.